Oh, jam! Hello again and welcome back to That's the Monday Night Magic intro. I am the Manipool and this is Chewy. Here on the Brian, Mike, and Dirk Network. Okay, let me try
Live from North Carolina. It's that show with the guys.
This is episode 509 of the Manipool, which is actually the show that you're listening to.
What? Can I get a refund?
No.
Oh.
Ha! And that is all I have to say about that. I'm Chewy. I'm bad at this game. Other dorks, take over.
I'm Brian. I'm the lead rambler, tangent master guy, and I am here to talk to you. This is where I say something witty that Mike picks up on. So I'll just say Wheel of Cheese.
Ooh.
All right. I'm Mike. I'm the rules guy and the game lore guy. And I suppose I'll follow up with summer sausage.
Love
and
sausage.
I'm Dirk, the self-proclaimed greatest man alive in moral comps of the group. And I'm going to come up with...
Oh, really?
I don't have a witty one for that. I'm sorry.
Spam in a can!
Thank you. Spam in the can.
No, that's mine.
Oh, it's yours?
So.
Lettuce head.
Ew. E. coli. So. Is that still a thing, by the way? Because I got a salad today.
Yeah, I think I heard about someone else getting sick or possibly dying yesterday.
Oh.
Ooh.
Well, if I get sick or possibly die, then I guess you won't hear this episode.
Good to know.
Yeah, right? So, before we get into this week's very grave topic, we wanted to mention the changes to Brawl that were in today's article.
Yeah, we're timely for once.
Yeah, well, this won't go up for another...
always.
This won't go public for another several days, but you know.
As far as when we recorded it, this is breaking news.
Yeah, this broke today. So as you guys may or may not know, Brawl is a new format that Wizards has been pushing lately that, unlike such things as Frontier or Old School, actually has lots of people excited other than a couple of people excited.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, not to disparage those other formats. If you like them, go for it. But, you know, just be aware that you're one of the few. So...
Tiny leaders.
Tiny leaders. Rainbow Stairwell.
Yeah,
so, Brawl is it's like standard Commander.
Yeah.
You have 60 card decks instead of 100 because the smaller card pool makes 100 kind of And legendary creatures or planeswalkers can be your... Are they called commanders in this game?
I think.
That wouldn't surprise me.
I think they are, just so that they can use the same rules vocabulary to...
Oh yeah, Brawl Commander. Okay.
For all intents, yeah.
And it's standard legal.
Yes.
Cards only. Now, granted, as I said, I think when they first announced it, that means this format is just a skeleton. You could totally do a modern Brawl or a legacy Brawl or whatever if you really wanted to, but the official Brawl is standard.
Kamigawa Block Brawl. Wow. You know, I said that as a joke, but you have so many choices for commanders, it's not even funny.
So many monocolor choices, but still.
Yeah, that's true. There was literally one gold card in the set. So
was that the Kami of...
There were two, weren't there?
It was.
Oh, there was
that's
also...
true. There was the Genju, although that was a legendary...
There was the Genju of the Realm. Oh, that was an enchantment.
But that was an enchantment. I was thinking of the death and life aspect combined.
Inami as one. Yeah.
Yes.
Was there a third one? Did someone get us with this trivia a little while ago? Or was there only two?
I think it was only the one. Or the two. Or the... Well...
Anyway,
I don't think there's another. Anyway,
doesn't matter.
So, we're going on about hypotheticals.
Today they have announced some changes to Brawl based on feedback from people. Because Brawl has been on Magic Online, I think, since right before Dominaria came out, maybe at the same time.
It was announced before, at the very beginning of previews, like in the previous, like the pre-preview thing, when the people have had it for a little over a month.
Right. And they've been playing it on Magic Online for slightly less than that.
Yes.
So originally it was going to follow the standard ban list and just be bam, there you go. But today they've realized they've announced that that's kind of silly because there are cards that are banned in standard that don't really matter and cards that are unbanned in standard that are absolutely miserable in Brawl. So, they have unbanned Aetherworks Marvel, Felidar Guardian, Attune with Ether, Rogue Refiner, Rampaging Ferocidon, and Ramunap Ruins, which, if I remember correctly, is everything banned in standard?
Except for Smuggler's Copter.
Ah, yes, because...
Yeah. That's still kind of silly.
Yeah.
So, other than Smuggler's Copter, there you go. They have banned Brawl Chief of Compliance, good old Barrel, because I think I said this on either an episode or an Odds and Ends last week. Barrel is I call him Barrel because he was the bad guy in Chandra's story in Magic Origins, and I really just wanted to make him sound like a douche, so he's just Barrel. But anyway, Barrel was the boogeyman, apparently. Just the end-all, be-all. When you queue up against a Barrel, you pull your hair out and you gnash your teeth, and you swear a lot, and then you lose. So
that was the impression I was under as well. So
yeah, according to this, Barrel decks constituted more than 35% of the metagame and achieved a nearly 65% win rate. Yeah.
That's a lot. That is not a small number.
It is not. In the two most recent Magic Online one-on-one Brawl challenges, there were two of them. The top 32 decks consisted mostly of Barrel decks. The first one was 24 of the 32. The second one was 23 of the 32.
Oh my god.
So yeah, that's brutal. So no more him. He's no. Just hell no. Oh, it says they considered banning him as a commander, but then, just get rid of him.
Yeah.
Which I think is the right move.
Yeah. And then they've also gotten rid of Sorceress Spyglass. Because... Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
Oh. If I remember correctly, Gatherer is apparently also down. I was going to try to get the wording. The auto card isn't working because the website's broken. Gatherer is apparently...
I have got a copy right here for a reason that I will actually get into in a second. For 2, it's an artifact. As it enters the battlefield, look at an opponent's hand, then choose any card name. Activated abilities of sources with the chosen name can't be activated unless they're mana abilities. Reason I'm looking at one right now, I had to just remove one from a Brawl deck I was constructing for this weekend. I didn't think it was that bad, but I see their reasoning for wanting to ban it, so...
Yeah, it kind of hoses the concept of being able to use a planeswalker as your Brawl commander.
Yeah, because you can just name their commander, and now that card is completely worthless until the Spyglass is removed.
Yeah.
And that's no fun. And that was the number 2 complaint that I saw on Twitter. First was Barrel, second was Sorceress Spyglass.
Yeah, I was going to include it just as a way to kind of keep planeswalkers in check. And of course, as with all things, if you want to play with a different ban list in your Brawl group than what they recommend, you got to write ahead. But under the rules, like unified rules, so that if you go to a store and you play with people you've never met before, it's banned. So don't do it. Don't do it.
And then finally, well, not finally, but also, if you are playing one-on-one Brawl, they've changed the starting life total to 20. So, yeah.
Simple, effective.
Yeah.
And it's worth pointing out that in multiplayer, it's still 30. It's not 40, it's 30.
Correct.
So, as I just said, we're getting ready to play Brawl for the first time this weekend. Oh, yeah. So I think we will definitely give the community our feedback. It was terrible. We don't really want to do it again. It was amazing. We want to do it every time. Or, that was pretty cool. So, we'll let everybody know.
Yeah. So, there's also a change for Karn.
Well, it's not just for Karn, but he's the most prevalent example.
Yeah, this was the third thing I saw the most people complaining about is, well, I can't use Karn as my commander because there aren't enough colorless lands. Can we just make wastes, like, standard legal for Brawl? And I was like, I don't think that's going to work. And no. So what they've done is they've said that if you have a colorless commander, so if your commander has no colored mana symbols, then you may include as many of the chosen basic land as you want. So in other words, if you're playing a colorless commander, you get to pick a type of basic land in your deck.
Yes.
I wonder why.
What do you mean?
I wonder why you can only pick one.
I'd probably just for consistency's sake to basically just say, look, this is your basic lands. There you go. So maybe as a way to, like, if they print anything that works, like, what are the search spells? Like, search out, like, a forest and islands, a plains and a swamp, put them on the battlefield. You don't get the advantage from that. You don't get the advantage of domain cards as much, maybe. But they needed a way.
I guess, but if they're focusing on standard era sets, then there isn't anything like that, is there?
Not now.
So I guess that's just a rule for possible future and people playing with other.
It was really the best way to make it work.
Yeah, and in the article, he did actually go over the suggestion of wastes, and he said, it's a bit clunky because it's not technically legal in standard, and what they wanted to avoid was a whole bunch of people saying, "Oh shoot, we've got to try and get cards from
Oath of the Gatewatch."
Oath of the Gatewatch, which, they're not. I don't think anybody's saying that Brawl is going to be so popular for this one particular commander or spectrum of commanders that it's going to create a run for it. But the whole point is that Brawl should be accessible. So, looking at someone saying, hey, you need this one card that's printed in this one set that isn't standard legal anymore. Yeah. As in, no.
So it's just an easy fix to be able to play Karn.
Mm-hmm.
And future other colorless things that would be worth it. So there you go. That's it for the Brawl changes, right?
That's it for the Brawl changes.
Nice.
I was briefly considering creating a Hope of Girapur deck for Brawl, and I was like, and that was prior to this change. I was like, no, that's too silly for me. And now I'm still not doing it.
Yeah.
Not for now. I've got 4 decks ready to go, or very close to being ready to go. I'm not, but yeah.
All right then. So let's get to the meat of the episode here.
Meat.
This was actually a listener suggestion from, oh Lord, Drew. Nope. Yeah, this is it. He was like, maybe you could do an episode discussing all things graveyard in Magic. And of course, Mike just lit up as soon as he read that, I'm sure. So yeah, we're mainly gonna do his first thing here, stuff like how different sets utilize the graveyard. We're like, ooh. So that's gonna be our main focus. And from there, we'll spread out into how the graveyard interacts with things and how things interact with the graveyard and the design space that you have with it and whatever. So, Mike, I think, did the most research. So, hey, Mike, what?
So, the game of Magic as it stands right now can use the graveyard in a lot of different ways. You can either use it as a place where, you just go put stuff to get back into your hand on the battlefield. You can actually spend cards in the graveyard as a resource for other things. You can care about when things go to the graveyard from some other zone, when you discard something, blah, 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 this, that, and the other thing. And at the very beginning, the game started out really basic. In Alpha Beta Unlimited, you just have some cards that, like I said, just a basic exploration of the design space. You have some cards that trigger when something dies, like Soul Net or Dingus Egg or Creature Bond.
Sorry.
Yeah. You have some basic ways to get things back from the graveyard. Animate Dead, Regrowth, Raise Dead, Resurrection. And you even have something that plays around with the graveyard in a more unusual way. You have Nether Shadow, which actually cares about Chewie loves Nether Shadow, which actually cares about other stuff in the graveyard while it's in the graveyard and cares about graveyard order, which is something the game doesn't do anymore. But yeah, that's basically what you started with. And the first several sets, that's also basically all they do. They just stick to that basic script. This triggers when something dies.
That's a lot.
Huh?
That's a lot.
It is. It's a lot of different concepts.
Like rather than just being a discard pile, well, where cards go and you can't use them anymore. Like, there's a lot going on there to be the very beginnings of Magic.
That's true. And I guess it helps that the concept of it as a graveyard more than just a discard pile.
Discard pile, yeah.
Kind of helped inspire designs. Like Sengir Vampire is a great inspired design for what happens when it kills a creature.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's, but I mean, just even at the very beginning, now 25 years ago, that was really deep and not just, like, we didn't get enters the battlefield effects until freaking Visions.
It took a while.
But that's a lot of depth and breadth for the graveyard in Alpha.
I mean, you think about all the innovations to the game, and you tend to think of a lot of them happening in what I would consider the more, I almost hate to use the word modern because that has a certain connotation, but really, I guess the modern era, because that's when you see things like double face cards and planeswalkers and colored artifacts. But Chewie's right. I think that it's important to note, very first set, straight out of the gate, graveyard, graveyard having a distinction from being a discard pile, which from my angle, this actually looked at what some of the other games call the graveyard, and it's interesting to see how they treat that zone, and what it results in kind of almost canonically for Magic is interesting, because also remember, Alpha was like a complete top-down set, 150%. So by calling it the graveyard, Rosewater and the other early designers of the game,
Garfield.
I meant Garfield, and he should take that as a compliment. He's been working on the game so long, it's hard to imagine it without him. But yeah, Garfield, the others that helped him playtest the game, by calling it a graveyard, it opens up so much flavor space. Chewie mentioned the Sengir Vampire, or did Mike? I don't know. That was 5 minutes ago. I've already forgotten. Somebody mentioned Sengir Vampire. Perfect. So that's just Alpha.
Yeah. So continue, Professor, by all means.
Yeah, the next several expansions, basically
Professor
just
Beard teaches graveyards.
Yes, I suppose I do. The next several expansions continued to build upon those basic effects. But there's a couple interested firsts that also show up along the way. Like Antiquities was the first appearance of Millstone.
Yeah.
Which became an all-new, completely, it became a whole new facet of the game.
Yeah.
In later years. Like the rule that you lose when you're supposed to draw a card, but you can't because your library was empty, that was part of the game in the first place. It helped the game to end if it got into a weird board stall that the players couldn't or wouldn't get out of. But Millstone gave you an interesting angle to purposefully pressure the game in that direction if it starts getting down at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Keep going.
What?
It sounded like Brian was taking a breath to say something else.
And I imagine that I often give that impression.
Okay.
I suppose it's worth noting that Millstone is so integral to the game. Not that it's really integral now, but it's so iconic that we don't call it, take X cards and put them into your graveyard from your library, the top X cards. We say mill for 5,
Mm-hmm.
So.
And if Wizards ever gets around to naming that mechanic, they're going to name it something other than mill, and all of us old people will hate it.
Hashtag Troll Shroud for life. Okay.
So yeah, Millstone was in Antiquities. Legends had the first appearance of a phoenix in red.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that became a thing that red could do to mess around with the graveyard. Red is the color that messes around with the graveyard the least. But a phoenix, just the concept of a phoenix, is very red. I mean, it's a big crazy bird made of fire. So
Yeah. Although it's interesting, different cultures treat phoenixes differently as far as their association with fire and rebirth and stuff like that. But yeah, as far as Magic has interpreted them, yeah, it's giant firebird that comes back from the dead.
Mm-hmm.
Best of all the worlds.
And check out this rules text. If Firestorm Phoenix would die, return it to its owner's hand instead. Until that player's next turn, that player plays with that card revealed in their hand and can't play it. Trust me, they kind of had to do that to make the printed text work.
I believe it.
The dark is in the dark. There was a cluster of black cards that were the first to really explore using cards in the graveyard as a resource. Okay, a cluster of black cards in one artifact. So Eater of the Dead could eat creatures in the graveyard to untap itself.
Oh, yeah.
Grave robbers could dig stuff up to give you life. Frankenstein's monster, you could exile creature cards to stitch it together. Nameless Race was interesting. It used the number of a certain chosen color or chosen type. I can't remember.
Chosen color, I think.
Yeah, it used the number of a chosen color of creatures in the graveyard to limit its power and toughness. And Necropolis, it was an artifact wall that could pump itself up by exiling creatures from the graveyard.
Which at the time was removing them from the game.
Yes, removing them from the game. And eventually they, further on down the road, they realized they were using the remove from game zone for so much in-game stuff that it was kind of silly to keep calling it that.
Yup.
But yeah, basic stuff. Ice Age block starts to take up.
Hey, wait a minute. Before we keep moving on, it should be pointed out that they actually originally had removed from the game in alpha with Swords to Plowshares is the first thing that comes to mind. Mm-hmm. And that was to differentiate it from the graveyard.
Yes, it was.
If you murder something, you can raise dead. Well, if you terror something, to use a word that actually matters, you can raise dead. But if you make it stop being a combatant and go be a farmer, you're not going to talk it into getting back on the battlefield.
Hey, Joe, we really need you.
Sorry, Bobby, the crops are coming in.
Corn.
So even in alpha, they had this concept of a place other than the graveyard which they called removed from game, to differentiate from the graveyard. If it got removed from the game, there was no getting it back then.
Right.
Huh.
And there was no interacting with it either.
Yeah. That came way later. But okay, sorry, keep going. Cold Snap. I mean, Ice Age.
Yeah. So Ice Age block, the idea of using the graveyard as a resource starts to show up again on a couple more cards, and this is where it becomes more of a basic part of the game instead of just a weird thing that was explored in the dark. So you start to see more cards like that starting in Ice Age and going through Homelands and Alliances. And when I was looking at Alliances, it seemed like the graveyard related stuff, I mean, it was the same stuff that Ice Age and Homelands were messing with, but it seemed denser in Alliances when I was looking through it, with all the dice triggers, the recursion, the resource usage, and just general manipulation of the graveyard that was there. So right. I wonder if they had something specific in mind with the design of that set.
So like what?
Like some of the manipulation cards, like Lodestone Bauble, Reinforcements, and Misinformation. I think those are the names of those cards. Like taking stuff from your graveyard and putting it back on top of your deck.
Oh.
Those all showed up in Alliances.
Huh.
Really?
I remember when Lodestone Bubble was printed, it was supposed to be it was going to be a thing for land destruction decks, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
You blow up a bunch of their lands.
Oh, and then blank their next few turns.
And then you blank their next few turns. And that was a thing, like, that was being able to change what your opponent was going to draw.
Yeah.
Was huge, and they used the graveyard to do that. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah, and you get similar things in Mirage and Visions, and pretty basic stuff. Also through the other core sets that had come out since Alpha, Beta, and Unlimited. Revised 4th edition, 5th edition, they were just reprints of stuff with pretty basic effects. Weatherlight was actually the first set with a significant graveyard theme. And it had, especially in a small set, it had a much heavier usage of dice triggers, recursion effects, stuff that either gets cards from the graveyard back to your hand or to the battlefield. Like self-mill and self-discard stuff, and other effects that use the graveyard as a resource in all 5 colors. Well, can't remember if red did it too much, but all over the wheel, not like confined to black like it was in the dark, and like it mostly was an Ice Age block. Like this was also the first appearance of Buried Alive. The only purpose of the card is to put specific things in your graveyard so that you can proceed with shenanigans.
Oh, another one of my favorite cards.
Yeah.
Wow, that came from Weatherlight? Really?
Yep. Weatherlight.
Huh. Okay, then.
Yeah, it was the first graveyard set. But yeah, like you have white cards that let you exile stuff to let you gain life or prevent damage. You have blue self-mill cards. You have black cards that eat stuff from graveyards or encourage you to discard cards from your own hand. There's even some green cards that care about the graveyard and others that get you stuff back. Like Harvest Worm and Fallow Worm, those are in Weatherlight.
Right. One of them wanted you to discard a land, and the other one wanted you to have a land in the graveyard, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I remember things.
Yeah.
Good job, Chewy.
Yeah, so just so you guys know, I will be relying on you for color commentary because I spent like hours putting these notes together and didn't do much stuff thinking intently about individual cards.
Okay. Blue. That's my color comment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh my god.
You knew what you were getting into when you signed up for this.
The next 2 blocks, Tempest block and Urza block, actually the next 3, and Masks block, actually the next 4, and Invasion block, were mostly focused on basic things. When I was looking through Tempest Stronghold Exodus, it seemed like there were some more sacrifice effects in general. Like they were a bit more dense than it looked like they were in the previous sets. And Stronghold and Exodus introduced some more graveyard as a resource and recursion effects to build off, some of the sacrifice and discard stuff that was happening elsewhere. Urza Saga didn't really do much, even with cycling as a major mechanic. Didn't really make use of that. But Urza's Destiny, it seemed like there was more dense in dice triggers. The next thing you see isn't until Prophecy, the last set of the Masks block, where it has this odd sub-theme of sacrificing lands as a resource and graveyard-related stuff having to do with that. But the graveyard-related stuff was pretty light. Prophecy was an extremely spiky set. You were supposed to find the gain this little shred of advantage play by doing something that isn't necessarily fun, but will make you win. It was weird.
Yeah, we've talked about Prophecy enough in the past to make me shudder.
Enough to last a lifetime?
Maybe not quite that long, but enough to where, yeah, let's keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, but Invasion block didn't really do anything out of the ordinary. But then Odyssey block really hit it hard. Odyssey was the next set with a major graveyard theme.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was done to support the threshold mechanic, where cards have a bonus effect if you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard. So there's lots of self-mill and self-discard effects, like activated abilities with discarding a card in the cost. There's lots of sacrifice effects. And with all that stuff getting thrown into the graveyard, there's also more themes of using graveyard as a resource and recursion. Odyssey introduced the flashback mechanic.
Dun dun dun.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And it also introduced a new cycle of Kindle-like cards that had a scaling effect based on how many copies were in your graveyard. Kindle first showed up in Tempest. I forgot to mention that earlier.
Oh yeah, that's
there was.
What's the blue one?
The blue one is accumulated knowledge.
That's the one. Yeah.
That showed up in Nemesis. The second set of the masks block. I think that's right.
Cool.
Gatherer.
So what is Gatherer still up?
It was working for me a few seconds ago.
Oh, okay, good. So what were you about to say, Dirk?
One that doesn't really use the graveyard, but kind of sort of involves the graveyard was Madness. Because that's where you were going to discard something into the graveyard, but instead you paid the Madness cost and it went to the battlefield.
That's right. Torment, the second set in the Odyssey block, introduced the Madness mechanic. So not only did it encourage you to be... It worked really well with all the effects in Odyssey that were encouraging you to discard things anyway. And then because you were discarding stuff and casting spells and filling up the graveyard, it continued to work well with Threshold and the other graveyard as a resource themes. So yes, Madness helped a lot.
Yeah, so Odyssey was Threshold, which just means have 7 or more cards in your graveyard to make something better or different. Usually better.
Usually.
And then Torment added on that with the whole, hey, while you're throwing things in the graveyard, maybe you could use some of that functionality to turn on these crazy cards like freaking Basking Rootwell and freaking Arrogant Worm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've been on the receiving end of the Baskin Rootwall enough times.
Oh, yeah. So while that didn't necessarily use the graveyard, it used graveyard mechanics from the previous set and just slotted right in.
Yeah, and because Torment was very heavily weighted towards black, and black is the graveyard color, you also got just more general stuff as well.
True. I think...
And Judgment basically furthered the themes that you got in Odyssey and Torment. And it also had that collection of advocates in green and white.
That's what I was trying to remember.
That did that odd thing where part of the cost of their activated abilities was to actually take cards from your opponent's graveyard and put them back in their hand.
For some beneficial effect.
Yeah.
To you.
Which...
So I'll let you have this thing, but then I'm going to do this other thing.
And depending on what your opponent was doing, there was actually a small chance it could actually be messing them up.
Yeah, I was going to say, in that format where people were trying to put things in their graveyard, taking things back out of their graveyard was potentially a nuisance rather than, hey, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna entomb this card in my graveyard. Now I'm gonna go ahead and target and bring it back. And you're like, actually, it's in your hand. So it's not. And as far as multiplayer, I always love the politics of like, we need some way to blow up Dirk's doomsday machine. Hey, Mike, have your naturalized back. So,
and then Judgment also is where was it the Soul Catcher's Airy?
Wasn't
that was in one of those sets.
Soul Catcher was
because when a creature in the case of Soul Catcher was birds, but when they went to the graveyard, then you got a benefit for a creature going to the graveyard.
Right, that was in Judgment. Yes. Yeah, because you were being encouraged to fill up the graveyard, there was also a lot of neat dice triggers stuff.
Yeah.
Soul Catcher's Airy being one of them.
Judgment also had the incarnations.
It did.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
How did we forget that?
I didn't. I never forget that.
Yeah, the incarnations did some fun stuff.
Yeah,
the incarnations for certain values of fun.
for those that don't know, the incarnations were a cycle of creatures. They were the first incarnations were in Odyssey, or technically they were in Judgment, and each one was a creature with some ability. And while that creature was in your graveyard and you controlled a particular kind of basic land, all of your creatures had their basic ability. For example, Brawn has Trample, and while it's in your graveyard and you control at least one forest, all of your creatures have Trample. So those were the uncommon ones, and there were 2 at rare. One was Genesis, which a lot of people thought, oh, Genesis is going to be the big card of the set. I I mean, it's good.
Yeah.
But Glory is the one that, at least in our group, got a little more. Is attention the right word? I don't know.
Ire?
Does Brian have a Glory in the graveyard? Yes.
Because Glory's the one that gave you protection from a color, wasn't it?
All of you pay 2 and a white. As long as Glory's in your graveyard, pay 2 and a white. Creatures you control have protection from the color of your choice until end of turn.
Yeah, the only way you could win against that in the group was if everyone just took their turn and just tried to go through Brian's mana pool. Trying to like, okay, he's got this many lands, so every single one of us has to attack him so that one of us will get through.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, because at the time, we were too dumb to just put in some graveyard hate. Like, remove a card from a graveyard. Sold! This card's dumb against 6 people.
We might as well note that they did a cycle of incarnations in, was it Lorwyn? And they work so differently. They literally don't... They all have abilities that are in effect while they're on the battlefield, and if they would go to your graveyard, they get shuffled back into your library instead, so they don't even interact with the graveyard at all.
Right.
So I just wanted to point that out because somebody might go, those aren't the only incarnations. Well, these are the only incarnations that care about being in your graveyard. So
since it was mentioned with stuff being in the graveyard, how much graveyard hate was there at this point in the game?
I mean, Tormod's Crypt was a long time ago.
Yeah, stuff
more
was shown
than
from
we
time to
played.
time. Tormod's Crypt showed up in a couple core sets and Chronicles.
Where was it originally from?
It was originally from the Dark.
From the Dark, okay. Which is the 0 cost artifact that you tap and sacrifice it to exile all cards from a player's graveyard.
Yeah.
And there were plenty of little cards that just did that. Like remove a card from a graveyard.
Yeah, one at a time.
We just didn't do that a whole lot.
Did it? Well, I don't know. The ones I'm thinking of, like Steam Claws or whatever it was, together.
Wait,
Steam Claw.
Steam Claw.
Steam Claw, okay, it was from Odyssey, and it was kind of clunky, but it was something. But I don't really remember anything between... Yeah, there were some like random spells in Ice Age Block and Mirage Block that could, hey, exile that. Yeah, it was here and there, but nothing super serious.
Let's see here. Remove target card in, and then graveyard. Let's see how huge this list is. No cards found. Oh, it's not removed anymore, idiot.
Oh, yeah, it's not removed. Okay, I missed that.
All right, let me try that again.
Try that again.
Exile target graveyard. Those words should...
Okay, apparently. Okay, so exile target graveyard. Yeah, that'll work. Oh my god.
How many?
Well, just for those words, there are 238, but like I didn't search for anything. Like there was Alms, which exiled the top card of your graveyard from the game that Mike was talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
That was from Tempest. Bronze Tablet? I'm not even reading that. Oh, here we go. Carrion Beetles.
Hey, Carrion Beetles.
From Urza's Gears. Saga?
Forgot about that.
For 2 black and tap, exile up to 3 target cards in a graveyard. And it's a 1/1 for 1. So there were cards that did stuff. There was Cabal Inquisitor in... that's your graveyard, never mind. That's your graveyard, never mind. Target Coffin Purge from Odyssey was the one I was thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
For a single black instant speed, exile target card in a graveyard. And it had a flashback of a single black. So that was like targeted graveyard hate. Just, no, you can't have that.
Yeah.
But the thing was, it sounds like you had to be playing black for that to work. It doesn't sound like that there were cards within all the colors that did that.
Let's see. I think it was mostly going to be black
cards and a couple artifacts.
Yeah. If
we were going to try and counter one of the incarnations, if you were playing any of the other colors, you would have to have played artifacts.
Oh, here's Funeral Pyre in white from Judgment. Exile a card in a graveyard. Its owner gets a 1/1 spirit with flying.
Phyrexian Furnace. It's in Visions or Weatherlight or something. I just remember that one. That could exile the bottom card of someone's graveyard, or you could target something if you sacrifice it.
Yeah. Ooh, there was Grave Gouger from Torment, the nightmare that grabbed 2 cards in a graveyard.
Yeah. So yeah, there was stuff.
There was stuff. Not much, but it was there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Headstone is the one from... I knew there was one in freaking Homelands. It was the 1 in a black, exile a card from a graveyard, slow trip. Draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep.
Oh, okay. I thought that was an Ice Age for some reason. Okay.
Like, I could see it in my head, but I couldn't remember what it was called or what it cost. But yeah, yeah. So yeah, there were cards, but yeah, like you're saying, Dirk, they were mostly black until around this time where they were starting to...
branch out a little bit.
Yeah.
Meet other people.
What he said.
Get back out there and... Oh man, eventually we got Shred Memory. Anyway, okay, let's keep going.
Yeah. So after that, there's another little bit of a shout again in terms of themes. Onslaught block was pretty basic stuff. You had some extra shenanigans in black because of the zombie and cleric tribal stuff going on there. Onslaught also reintroduced cycling, which, you know, works well with other Graveyard Matters sets and cards. Yeah, that was pretty basic. Mirrodin was also pretty basic. You saw a little more artifact recursion effects just because it was an artifact set, so why not? And there were some imprint cards that used the graveyard as a resource.
Right.
But then the next big thing actually comes in Champions of Kamigawa. And that's mainly because of the soul shift mechanic for spirits.
Freaking Spirit Craft.
Yep. And soul shift came with a number. Like if a spirit had soul shift 4, that means when it died, you could look in your graveyard for a spirit card that cost 4 or less and put it into your hand. And all of them except one card, they all change down. So that one with Soul Shift 4, it probably cost 5. And something with Soul Shift 2 probably cost 3. You know, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So they could recur into each other. And there was a pretty liberal use of sacrifice this creature, do a thing effects on the spirits to help support Soul Shift and make it more interesting. And that got more support in the next 2 sets of the block, Betrayers of Kamigawa and Saviors, but otherwise it was doing pretty normal magic-y things.
Oh, and then we get to Ravnica. Shred Memory.
And then we get to Ravnica. Shred Memory, that's right. Even though it wasn't the main mechanic for the guild, there was a very strong mill theme in the blue-black Dimir guild.
Yep.
Extremely strong.
Yep. That Glimpse the Unthinkable was one of the like highlight cards for the set.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's still a highlight card even today.
Yeah.
That set.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And,
it's the best at what it does.
And then, you know, you can't talk about Ravnica in the graveyard without talking about Dredge.
Dredge.
Oh, dear God.
The ultimate graveyard mechanic, the most broken graveyard mechanic.
On the Storm, Rosewater's Storm scale, Dredge, he could have easily named it the Dredge scale as well, in terms of mechanics that they think they could ever bring back. Because you called it the ultimate graveyard mechanic. Do you think you stand by that? Yeah, I think so. You should stand by that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely ranks up there, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Because you get to get a card back from the graveyard into your hand for no mana payment. The payment, air quotes, is putting even more cards into your graveyard. Guess what? There's lots of cards that interact with the graveyard.
Oh, really? Uh-oh. Guess we're screwed.
And this is where you get the Magic devs all sitting in a room on fire going, this is fun.
It's funny. It's funny that at the very beginning, when they previewed that beetle guy, I can't remember what he's called.
Juice?
I know what you're talking about.
That 4/4 for 5 with Dredge 1.
Yeah, the Mark Rosewater actually previewed it in his first preview article. He's like, here's Dredge, and here's this guy, and we really like how efficient he is. Because, you can draw cards and get him back, and he's great. But he costs what, 5 or 6?
Graveshell Scarab.
5. Graveshell Scarab. But the thing was, at first, people were like, "Oh wow, it has Dredge 1. You only need to mill 1 card to get it back."
Yeah, and then they look at something like Stinkweed Imp, and they're like,
I guess it's okay.
Yeah.
But now it's like, if that Dredge number is anything less than 4, don't even talk to me.
Yeah.
And that is exactly the way it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas like Dark Blast, you're like, yes.
Dark Blast rules. Okay, sorry. Dark Blast gets a pass.
Well, Dark Blast, I mean, it's more than one.
It's so good that it's okay that it only has Dredge 3.
Yeah, and again, only 3. So, still good. Still really good.
Yeah, Dredge was kind of silly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Was it in Dissension?
It was in Ravnica.
That was in Ravnica.
Golgari had Dredge, and then Dimir had, as Mike said, the prominent sub-theme of milling.
And I always wondered if it would be fun to have one person who's playing a Dredge deck and getting all stuff in the graveyard, and the Dimir person's going, "Okay, I'll help you," trying to mill them out.
And they're like, "What am I doing?"
I played a couple matches of Modern like that. I was playing my Life from the Loam deck. I got matched up against someone who's playing a hardcore mill deck, and like near the end of each of our games, I had my, because I had to see what was in my graveyard. I didn't just have it in a single pile. I had it like spread out in columns. And at one point, one of the people sitting next to us happened to look over to see how our game was going, and he saw what the layout on my playmat looked like. And he's like, "What is going on over here?"
He cast 15 Factor Fictions. Go back to your game.
Yeah.
It's 52 card pickup. And he's got 8 cards left. So mind your own business.
Yeah, he's milling me, and I've been dredging back Life from the Loam. Don't worry.
Everything's fine.
Nothing to see here.
Yeah. But Dredge, this is when we were all playing together a lot, and most of us were still kind of
Noobs.
Yeah. Like we hadn't, and we also played in huge multiplayer games where Dredge is really a terrible mechanic for the most part.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's the main reason why when I built my green-black deck with a bunch of Dredge cards, I just decided, I think it was Gabe who came up with the suggestion. It's like, why don't you just make a really big deck? I'm like, huh. so my casual Dredge deck, it's not a Dredge combo deck. It's just a deck with lots of Dredge cards in it. It has 120 cards.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was easier for me to do the.
It would not be Commander legal.
No, I did it that way because it was easier for me to do the land math in my head when I was building it.
Oh.
Yeah. It's everything times 2.
I will say that whenever Mike plays the deck, he pulls out the library, and we just go, he's playing the Dredge deck.
So which deck is that again?
There's no question about this. It's the Dredge deck.
I actually took a version of it to Friday Night Magic at the Toy Factory one time way back in the day when it was still standard legal. And what I would do is I had it in 2 separate deck boxes, and at the start of the game, I would take both tabs out of the boxes and just shuffle them together in front of my opponent.
Who's going like, he's crazy.
What are you doing?
It was funny to see the weird looks on the other people's faces.
You serious, bro? And if it seems like we're spending an exorbitant amount of time on Dredge, just because Dredge is exorbitantly important when it comes to the graveyard.
Yeah.
Like, Dredge, just looking only at Golgari Grave Troll, which has been banned and unbanned several times.
They keep unbanning it, thinking, you really shouldn't be that bad, and then it smacks them up and down. Tournament Magic has an abusive relationship with Golgari Grave Troll, or more that the Golgari Grave Troll is abusive toward Tournament Magic. You keep letting it back in, thinking it's changed, and it makes all these promises, and then before you know it. And as a defense attorney, I'm not actually belittling domestic violence whatsoever.
Just like that. And then you also have, as the Golgari Guild Mage, sacrifice a creature, return target creature from your graveyard to your hand. So,
Yeah.
you could get one of your big creatures back for 4 and a black. And the Golgari Grave Troll is black-green, 2 black-green hybrids.
Yeah, it wasn't just Dredge. There was a lot of other graveyard manipulation stuff in black-green, just because of the nature of the Golgari Guild and their whole connection to the life-death cycle.
Wait.
So that shows up a lot too.
Oh, you meant the Guild Mage is 2 black-green hybrid. Okay, because you said the Grave Troll, and I'm like, what? No, he costs like 5.
Sorry, I meant Guild Mage.
I heard Guild Mage.
Oh, okay, good. It just, my brain either screwed up or whatever. Doesn't matter. Anyway, moving on. Freaking Dredge, man. But yeah, Dredge is still a thing in Legacy and Modern.
Yeah,
Still.
not in the way that it first appeared here, but
No.
Wait, what do you mean?
It doesn't have to have.
the
Grave
Dredge
Troll.
decks in Legacy and Modern are based on Bridge from Below, which hadn't shown up yet.
Oh, but what I'm
Bridge from
saying
Below and
is
other nonsense.
those decks don't work without the Dredge mechanic.
Oh yeah, they don't work at all. They're just dumb.
Like, there's even a Dredge deck in Legacy that is mana-less Dredge that plays literally 0 mana sources. Not 0 lands, 0 mana sources.
What does that tell you? Does that seem like that mechanic is a good idea?
Not
Sure, it was a good.
as
Sure.
such.
Again,
See
there
that
is a
with
reason
time.
why they have not brought this mechanic back.
Dirk is correct.
So that was Ravnica City of Guilds. What else do we have there?
Let's see.
Professor Beard.
Not much else happened in the rest of the block. I noted the haunt mechanic in the Orzhov Guild and Guild Pact, which was really just, hey, when this dies, instead it goes over here, and you might get another effect later when this other thing dies.
Mm-hmm.
Which was interesting, but it wasn't really a graveyard-centric effect.
Haunt was such a
It
great...
really wasn't a great effect either.
Like, Haunt was such a great flavor thing
Mm-hmm.
that I think they just tried too hard to put it in the game.
Probably.
Yeah, I can see that.
Like, when you have to explain it 4 times.
Well, what was the discussion we had before is that, or in how they developed the mechanics for each one of the guilds is essentially they split off and said, okay, here's the hybrid color, or here's the 2 colors. Come up with some sort of flavor that goes with these. And some of them were great, and some of them were just terrible. It's like they just did not have enough time to really think it over.
Yeah, like Radiate, wasn't or Radiance, or whatever it was.
Think Radiate.
You see, we can't even remember what it's called.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's how much it's been brought up in conversation
The
and
Boro-
our gameplay.
The Boros mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Battalion was so much better. Made so much more sense.
Yeah.
And
As
that'll
in-
be brought up in our discussion later, more than likely.
Mhm. Yeah, so Cold Snap was also released around this time, and it further explored the themes from back in Ice Age, and it also introduced the Recover mechanic,
Yes.
which showed up mostly on spells, and I think there's only one creature that I could think of. It might have been another one.
The assassin.
Ours is Assassin,
Yeah.
but otherwise it shows up on spells, and it was while that card with Recover was in your graveyard. If any other, so it triggers when another card goes to your graveyard, and when it triggers, you can either pay the Recover cost and put that card back in your hand, or exile it, and you don't get another chance to try to recover it later.
Okay,
So that was interesting.
Let me read the...
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, Scryfall hasn't updated it. Wait, hang on. Because Gatherer was dead, so I was using Scryfall. Okay, hang on. Let me look at it. Garza's. Herp. Come on, Gatherer. No, this is also... Okay. So the reminder text says, when another creature is put into your graveyard from the battlefield. Why does that not say, when a creature under your control dies? I guess
Well,
because under your control?
it's specific about going to your graveyard. So it can't say
Oh.
when a creature you control dies, because then
Things like
it would
Emrakul
trigger-
or whatever.
yeah, because then it would trigger if you took control of something and it died and went to your opponent's graveyard.
Okay. So this is very specific. Okay, so it says, when another creature is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, you may pay the recover cost. If you do, return this card from your graveyard to your hand. Otherwise, exile this card. It was very much all or nothing with recover. It's a very strange
Yes.
mechanic.
You got one shot.
Yep.
What if
That's
you
right.
had one shot, one opportunity to get back a Garza's assassin?
Mom spaghetti.
Would you recover it? Or just let it exile?
Time's up over Blau. Next.
Yeah. So next was Time Spiral Block, which
Oh dear God.
yeah, so I mean this is just if you remember any part of if you remember any part of this episode up until now, you basically just repeat all that in smaller numbers. Time Spiral was a mishmash of all of Magic's history. It reintroduced a flashback mechanic and several other things to the game. Planar Chaos was a similar mishmash, except it shifted things back and forth between different colors. Future Sight was a mishmash of Magic's future. It introduced Delve, the Delve mechanic that we would see later in Khans of Tarkir. And it introduced Bridge from Below, which makes the present day versions of the Dredge decks that we understand work.
And I still don't understand that card.
It's bizarre.
Okay, wait a minute.
It only does something when it's in the graveyard.
Bridge from Below says, whenever a non-token creature is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, if Bridge from Below, why can't I say that, is in your graveyard. So whenever a non-token creature is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, if Bridge from Below is in your graveyard, you get a 2/2 zombie.
Right.
And when a creature is put into an opponent's graveyard from the battlefield, if Bridge from Below is in the graveyard, you exile it.
Right.
It's a very weird card. It's an enchantment that literally does nothing on the battlefield.
Yeah, so the legacy version of the deck, you end up with multiple copies of Bridge in your graveyard, and then you sacrifice, after you've dumped most or all of your library into the graveyard, you sacrifice some Narcomoebas who went from your library to the graveyard to the battlefield. You sacrifice some of those to Dredge Return to get something crazy back and win the game. And the Narcomoebas dying when you pay the flashback cost for Dread Return is what triggers all those copies of Bridge from Below, so you get a big crowd of zombies to play with.
Yeah, it's very strange.
It's very strange.
I actually just realized something we missed.
What's
But
that?
Future Sight gives us an excuse to go back and look at it. We missed the original Lurgoyf, and then we missed the cycle of Goyfs.
Oh yeah, I made note of the first appearance of Lurgoyf in Ice Age, but I didn't mention it for some reason. And there was another cycle of Goyfs in Odyssey.
Yeah, so the Lurgoyf cared about creatures in graveyards.
Yes, and it was a 0+, and it was a star +1.
Yeah. And then that was Odyssey proper, right?
That was Ice Age.
No, I mean the cycle.
Oh yeah, the set Odyssey. Yes.
Okay, yeah,
Yes.
that was in Odyssey where we got a Goyf for each color that cared about something different. So like the
Right, yeah.
Magnivore was sorceries, the
Terravore was lands, Mortivore was creatures, Cantivore was enchantments, Cognivore was instants.
there we go. I knew that Mike would get them all if we just gave him a second. And then yeah, the granddaddy of all the Goyfs that was 50 cents when it came out in Future Sight,
Yes.
and that was the Tarmogoyf. And what a giant mess that became.
Part of it is because someone put a half-remembered incorrect version of it back in the file right before printing. It was supposed to be a 1GG ***, but instead it ended up being printed as a 1G ***+1.
And thus perished Magic's ability to make sense in the secondary market. So yeah. Okay, there, we covered that.
Mhm.
Is there anything going on in Lorwyn Block?
In Lorwyn and Morningtide, no, just basic stuff.
Didn't think so.
In Shadowmoor and Eventide, there was a little bit more. Shadowmoor introduced Persist, and it had some sacrifice effects to go with it, and a small bit of I got weird hiccups, and a small bit of recursion and graveyard as a resource stuff as well. Eventide introduced Retrace,
which is what my brain filled in when you first said recover, and I was like, that wasn't in this set. But I was like, Mike knows what he's talking about, and it turns out you did. Yeah, Retrace. Hang on, can I do this from memory? Retrace, you could discard a land card to put the card with Retrace back into your hand?
Not exactly.
No, I knew it was something
If
like
it
that.
was, if the card with Retrace is in your graveyard, you can cast it from your graveyard by discarding a land as an additional cost to cast it.
Oh, okay, so it never actually went back to your hand, but...
Right. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. And that was really neat.
Yes, very neat.
And it's really cool that, especially with that, once you get something into the graveyard, it was always there and always available for you.
Mm-hmm.
Which is not really a thing the graveyard had done before. Really.
Right, you're either getting it back and putting it somewhere else or using it up.
Yeah. All right.
It's almost like giving yourself an activated ability.
Discard a land, deal 1 damage to a player. Wait,
Yeah.
Flame Jab say player or creature?
Creature or player.
Oh, it was... Oh.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
I don't believe it.
sorcery.
Flame Jab. Oh my god. It does deal 1 damage to any target.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, updated wordings. Nice.
There have been a couple times where out of desperation, I'd cast it 5 times in a row to kill something that really needed to die. But you know what? That thing really needed to die. So I was
Yeah, it
happy.
did. All right.
Let's see. In Shards of Alara block, you had some more focused stuff. Shards of Alara just helped smooth out things, reintroduced cycling, so that contributed to the general graveyard effects that you could find just on the normal Magic cards that showed up. But the Grixis shard, the blue, black, and red one, had the unearth mechanic, which was basically flashback for creatures. You could pay the unearth cost to get them out of the graveyard, back onto the battlefield. They had haste, and you exile them at end of turn, or whenever the next time they would leave the battlefield. And the Jund shard, the black, red, green shard, had a bunch of dies, triggers, and sacrifice creatures stuff, including its named mechanic, the Devour mechanic, where you could sacrifice creatures as something entered the battlefield to put extra +1/+1 counters on it, and sometimes it affected some other ability on the card. And since those overlapped in 2 colors, black and red, you could get some. They could get some cool interactions with each other. Those 2 shards.
Yeah, they could.
And in Conflicts in Alara Reborn, you basically just get those basically just keep exploring the themes that started in shards, except the different shards factions start to blur together at the edges and cross over each other more. A little bit in Conflux and then all over the place in Alara Reborn.
One thing real quick, and I may have completely missed this in conversation, but one thing also was about bringing back creatures from your opponent's graveyard.
What are some of the things?
Is that something we've discussed that's been brought up in discussion?
Nothing that we brought up specifically.
But that does start showing up. It actually showed up. My recollection was back in Onslaught block.
Yeah, there were some there. I think the very first one was Ashen Powder.
Wasn't it the Scion?
Yeah,
No.
the Sign of Darkness and Onslaught block was a big one. I think the very very first instance was Animate Dead. Animate Dead can get
From an opponent's graveyard too.
from anywhere. Mhm.
Oh, it could, couldn't it?
But yeah, but very rarely, right? You do see those effects show up, but it's pretty rare, and they show pretty far between. But sometimes you get a big bad that just screams, "Hey, look at me!" Like Sign of Darkness.
But I said my recollection was, oh god, we gotta make sure we bring up the Scion. Because, oh my gosh, he was one that was like, oh, please let me hit with this guy. If I could put a shroud on him so he could just be like, nope, Can't touch me, can't touch me. I want him in your graveyard. But I just wasn't sure if that had been discussed, because I'm again, I remember the style and I was like, oh, we got to mention the stuff that comes where you get to pull stuff from someone else's graveyard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we didn't mention that. I guess because it never showed up as a theme anywhere, because that would just be too powerful and mean to be a whole theme. But yeah, it does show up on singular cards here and there over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't what's that reanimate spell that grabs anything that's from around when we started playing?
What do you mean by anything?
From anyone's graveyard.
Anyone's graveyard?
Like, isn't there a zombify effect that grabs from anywhere?
Rise from the Grave came much later than that.
Yeah, and actually turn something into a zombie, but that was
right. That does do that. I always forget.
Ashen Powder can only do opponents' graveyards. Animate Dead and Dance of the Dead can do anyone. I think Necromancy can pull from anywhere, and there's a similar enchantment in one of the Urza's block sets that I can't remember the name of right now that was similar to Necromancy that I think can grab from anywhere. Reanimate can get from anywhere because it's ridiculous.
a little bit.
Bah.
Yeah, I can't think of anything specifically in Odyssey block or Onslaught block. I wonder why. I'm sure there's something.
I don't know. Oh well. I just thought I seem to remember there being something that that we would always have issues with. What is put target creature card from a graveyard. No cards found. Well, you jerk, that's literally what this says.
I think they use the word return.
Oh, like Rise from the Grave says put.
Oh, Rise from the Grave says put?
Yeah.
Huh.
That's the Commander Anthology version.
Never mind.
But when I type that into the search, that exact phrase into the search, it's like no cards found. What? There we go. Ashen Powder. Oh wait, no, we mentioned that. Beacon of Unrest. I knew there was one, damn it.
That's a big one.
Okay.
That's a big one.
That's a big one, yeah.
Yeah, that was from Fifth Dawn. Mm-hmm. That's right.
There's also the Debtor's Knell, which is one that we used a lot.
Yes.
Oh, and Gravespawn Sovereign is another one that we used a lot.
Gravespawn Sovereign.
Yup.
Oh my god.
That.
Okay, those are the others that were gnawing at the back of my head. I'm like, I know this exists, but I had to see them. Oh, and also a flipped Nezumi Grave Robber. What is he?
Right.
Night Eyes the Desecrator, but that takes too much effort.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. It was one stupid game where I got to go to Magical Christmas Land with Gravespawn Sovereign that made Corey stop playing with Mystic Snake.
Yup. You're like, tap 5 zombies, get back a Mystic Snake, counter that, and Corey was like,
Just like that.
what's the matter, Corey? Oh, okay.
So do you want some water?
Or maybe some fire for Mike. All right,
Just
anyway.
a screwdriver to put his head back on straight.
Yeah. Oh, there's also Cauldron Dance, one of those that Mike loves so much.
Yes.
Wait, no, that's just your graveyard.
Your graveyard and your hand, yes.
Oh, well, why is it listed here?
But I still like it.
Weird. Okay, anyway, so good job, Dirk, bringing up other people's graveyards that we had completely neglected. So that was Alara.
Right.
Yes.
And here's where you actually start seeing small sub-themes show up in the core sets. Like, for the next few years in M10, M11, M12, you had this generic mess with the graveyard millibit theme in blue and black showing up in the core set to give you something interesting to do in limited if the card showed up. But otherwise, like Zendikar block just had your basic magic effects. So did Scars of Mirrodin block. But when I was looking at that, I did note that it felt like there was a higher density of dies triggers and sacrifice stuff. I guess to play up the themes of the just the war themes of the set.
And also at this point, they had started with the designing with the next set in mind, right?
Right.
Or the next block.
Mm-hmm.
Because then we come to Innistrad.
Innistrad. Another one with a major, major graveyard theme. Dice triggers all over the place. Self-milling and discarding stuff to fill up your graveyard so that you could use the graveyard as a resource for other stuff. And Innistrad reintroduced the flashback mechanic from way back in Odyssey block. I don't think we explained it the first time. Most people know, but the cards haven't been printed in a while. A spell with a flashback cost meant that if it was in your graveyard, you could pay the flashback cost and cast it from the graveyard and then exile it after it resolved, instead of sending it back to the graveyard.
Yeah.
That was done so that you couldn't cast it in perpetuity.
Right.
Ooh, good word.
Yeah.
And isn't this where, was it it was original Innistrad block where all spells got flashback because of, my brain is blanking. I can see Mega Man. I can see his freaking art, but I hate him so much.
Snapcaster Mage.
Snapcaster Mage. Yes, he could hand out flashback. Right.
Yeah, so all spells forever have flashback thanks to Innistrad block because of the freaking Snapcaster Mage.
Yeah, it was a major graveyard theme. The morbid ability word showed up in an original Innistrad block where cards would get a bonus effect if a creature had died that turn.
Oh yeah, because that was when wasn't humans turning into spirits was a big thing.
Yes, there were some humans that died into spirits, or you could do something with them in the graveyard to turn them into spirits, or maybe that's.
I recall that being a theme that a human dies and you get a spirit, which even though it's not big, it has flying, which was a big thing.
Right.
And was blue in this set the one that blue and black were the ones that had a lot of the recursion from the graveyard?
Yeah.
Yes, and part of that was also because blue and black were the colors that represented the zombie tribe, with black being basically your voodoo zombies and blue being your science zombies.
Because, and I know we had talked about this, that for the most part, black had been big in recurring things back from the graveyard, except for the Golgari, which were the black and green. And this was a one where blue got its chance to get a lot of the recursion stuff as well.
Yeah, and also a lot of self-mill showing up in blue too, to fill up your graveyard with fun stuff to mess with.
So the only color that really, like you had said earlier, that really had very little in terms of graveyard recursion has been red. And unfortunately, white only got this little bit with the spirits and then haunt.
Like after a while, as the game started to just evolve more in general, white can recur enchantments and sometimes artifacts when it's necessary, and it can get back small creatures. But otherwise, it doesn't do a whole lot of stuff. Red is the one that does the least amount of messing with it, unless it's getting back. Every once in a while, you'll see a red card that lets you get a sorcery back in your hand. That's something that red's allowed to do.
Quick question. What was it, bandits? What was it that from Mirage? Was it creatures that you could get back from the graveyard that were one less than the cost? What were they called? It was bandits. I thought was one. What was the creature types?
I'm not following you.
Are you thinking like mercenaries?
Was it mercenaries?
Yeah, that wasn't graveyard. That was digging stuff out of the library.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, you're thinking rebels and mercenaries, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what it was. I wasn't sure if it was graveyard or if it was library or not.
Mercenaries would have ruled if they could have got stuff back out of the graveyard, but no.
Oh, wow. Instead, they're dumb.
Instead, they're dumb. Okay.
But yeah, so that was that. After Innistrad, we returned to Ravnica and promptly forgot about Avacyn Restored.
I feel like that was a shameless plug right there.
Yeah.
We returned to Ravnica.
Mm-hmm.
Wonk, wonk, wonk.
So, in the first set, Return to Ravnica, the Golgari and Dimir guilds appeared again. Wait, that's not right. The Golgari guild appeared in Return to Ravnica, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Golgari
Swarm was in Ravnica. Return to Ravnica.
It was 5-5 this time.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was Golgari, Selesnya.
Let's see. Gatecrash had Boros,
Dimir.
Dimir,
Okay.
Orzhov, Gruul, and Simic.
Okay.
So Return had the other 5.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the intro packs. So there was Azorius, Izzet, Golgari, Rakdos, and this one that has a land as the cover.
Yay.
Which is Selesnya? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, Selesnya.
That's right.
Right. Okay. So yes, in Return to Ravnica, the Golgari showed up again. So they had the scavenge mechanic this time, where you could use creatures in the graveyard to put +1/+1 counters on things.
Right.
And it also had other graveyard as resource effects in black and green. And even though Dimir wasn't yet one of the guilds being specifically featured in the set, you do see a small mill theme start to reappear.
Mike.
Did we really just... He's been roboting off and on a little bit here, but...
Right.
Mike, if you can hear us, we can't hear you.
Oh well. Guess we will fill time. Did we ever go back and mention what Delve was from Future Sight?
I don't know that we did.
I think we brought it up and then one of us sidetracked him. So Delve, which came up in Future Sight, which returned in Tarkir, was exiling cards from your graveyard to pay the mana cost, the colorless part of the mana cost from the cards with Delve.
Am I here?
Hey,
Now
you're back.
Okay.
And led to horrible things. Well, at the time it didn't, but it eventually led to horrible things happening. Since you were gone, we went back and spelled out Delve, Mike.
Yeah, I could hear every word you were saying.
Oh, okay, good.
Figured. That's how it usually works.
Yeah.
Okay, so the mill sub theme, and then you were gone.
Yeah, so like even though Dimir wasn't specifically featured in this set, you do start to see a small mill theme appearing in the blue and black in this set. And then Gatecrash, like we just mentioned, that's when the Dimir Guild did come back officially, and that just further explored those themes and that unnamed grind mechanic that they were originally thinking of having be the Dimir mechanic for the block, but they couldn't make it work, but they left it on some cards. Grind means you mill someone until they hit a land.
Right.
Yes.
And it gets that nickname, like Mind Grind, I think is the existing card where they chose to get that nickname from. But also shows up on some other things that's just not named. And then Dragon's Maze is just kind of slapped together more stuff from previous 2 sets and explored them a bit more.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think anything got reinvented with Dragon's Maze.
No.
Not really.
All right, home stretch. We can do it.
Yeah, so continuing with the interblock design, in Theros, you continue to see a graveyard as a resource theme in black and green. Mill yourself, get stuff back, play around with things, interacting not just with stuff in Return to Ravnica, but also some stuff from Innistrad if you went back that far. And there was also a little more of a theme in the black cards in that set related to the returned. It wasn't zombie tribal, but it was a zombie theme. And there was also some more enchantment-related recursion in the block as a whole because it was an enchantment block. One of the guys in Journey to Nyx just filled those things out a little more. Nothing really different or groundbreaking there. And in M15 continued that graveyard as a resource theme in the black-green cards there.
Oh, it did, didn't it?
Yeah, so in that color combination, in all of these
sets, you have those synergistic cards that can work with each other to help each other do their thing.
I may or may not have forgotten about that.
Yeah, I remember because I built a deck like that at the M15 pre-release. It was great.
Of course you did.
Let's see. Cons block. Cons of Tarkir reintroduced the delve mechanic for the Sultai brood. And like they said,
Dredge Cruise.
yeah, like they said, you could spend cards in your graveyard to help cast a spell, and it got support for that in all of its component colors to fill up your graveyard with stuff to use to help pay delve costs. Fate Reforged messed with that a little bit. It drew back from the 3-color wedges into just 2-color factions. So delve and most of the support related to it shifted into blue-black in Fate Reforged. But there was a very light remnant of support cards in green. Basically just cards that happen to put things in your graveyard as a side effect. There was only a couple of those. And then in Dragons of Tarkir, in the blue-black Sultai clan, delve was just replaced with exploit, which is still interesting because it's a sacrifice creatures mechanic. So it's still putting stuff in your graveyard to synergize with the delve cards and the other graveyard related cards from earlier in the block.
Right. I'd also like to take a minute to apologize for Mike's roboting.
I'm not even doing anything. I don't know what's going on.
It'll be all right. We can still understand you.
Okay, that's good. Origins at the time, the last course that was the last one that was going to be for a while.
Okay, now we can't understand you.
That's tough. Yeah, Magic Origins something dark side.
That's amazing.
We agree.
All right, we're going to try something. Everyone hang up.
See if that fixes it.
Ta-da!
Hello.
Hello?
Yay,
Hello.
Mike's not roboting. Okay, go.
Yay. Okay, go.
And you know what? I'm not editing that out because this is raw, emotional, whatever nonsense.
This is the crap we have to deal with sometimes.
All right, so Magic Origins.
Magic Origins. The last course set for a while. We're about to get a new one soon. Magic Origins had the spell mastery mechanic in every color. White, blue, black, red, green. And for spell mastery, it only appeared on instants and sorceries. And the effect of the spell gets an upgrade if you happen to have 2 or more instants or sorceries in your graveyard when casting it,
I'd forgotten all about spell mastery.
Yeah. So, for example, a spell that deals 2 damage to a creature will deal 3 if you have spell mastery. The Dark Petition, instead of being a tutor for 5 mana, it's a tutor that returns 3 mana to you if you have spell mastery. Neat little stuff like that.
Yeah.
And there were other cards I did notice several other cards seeded in blue, black, and green to continue to support and interact with the themes in Theros block and Khans of Tarkir, Dragons of Tarkir block.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It is. It's really neat.
I like it.
So, Battle for Zendikar. It's the first sets. It's actually pretty light on the normal Magic stuff for graveyard interactions, in terms of just discarding stuff or getting stuff back in your hand or stuff like that. It's pretty light, and the whole processing mechanic has this weird backwards relationship where you're taking cards from exile and putting them into your opponent's graveyard to do stuff. It's just really weird. And Oath of the Gatewatch had a small graveyard as a resource theme in black-green, but again, it's just small. And that block was just kind of weirdness in the other direction in terms of graveyard themes and mechanics and interaction. I guess because they didn't want it to accidentally supercharge Shadows over Innistrad block, which makes sense.
Yeah.
And Shadow's Block was still getting some support from the cards seeded in Origins. So one of the big things in Shadows of Innistrad, the Delirium mechanic cared about the number of different card types in your graveyard. So again, it gets backed up by a bunch of sacrifice effects, discard effects, mill effects. You have dice triggers going on, since you're already throwing stuff away, might as well get a bonus for it. It reintroduced the madness mechanic, which intersected well with the discard effects. And along with all that, because you don't want to interfere too much with what you're trying to do with Delirium, there was a moderate theme of using cards in the graveyard as a resource, but not a really heavy one. That showed up in pretty much every color but red. Red just doesn't do this.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And again, Delirium is another one of those mechanics where you get a bonus if you've been able to do the thing. Yeah, and here, Delirium, you wanted 4 or more different card types among the types in your graveyard.
Yeah, a bunch of these are just, I've noticed that I don't think I've ever thought of before, different takes on Threshold.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So instead of 7 cards in graveyard, it's 2 or more instant or sorceries. Or
yes.
More than 2? Is it 2 or more?
2 or more. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or 4 or more different card types. And lots of ways to enable those to happen.
Yes.
I don't think I'd ever made that particular connection before. But okay.
Yeah. And you see stuff like that in other places. Like Metalcraft is another example of a simple threshold mechanic.
Oh, like yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, I meant threshold like the magic mechanic.
Yeah, graveyard threshold. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, okay.
Eldritch Moon just kind of built on what Shadows over Innistrad was doing. We back off of graveyard stuff again in Kaladesh. You're back to your basic magic stuff. It's a little more artifact-centric, just because it was an artifact set. Kind of like we've seen in other, like particular type-themed sets before. Aether Revolt does a little more. It gets more sacrifice this effects to help support its revolt mechanic, where you get a bonus if a permanent has left, a permanent you control has left the battlefield this turn. Probably the easiest way to make that happen is to send something to the graveyard.
Right.
So that's what was going on there. In Amonkhet block, we get another major set of graveyard themes. In Amonkhet itself, you have Embalm and Aftermath being backed up again by sacrifice effects, discard effects, mill, graveyard as a resource, dice triggers, blah, 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 blah. And
it's almost like they've learned in later years that if you're going to have these mechanics, you have to support them.
Yes, exactly.
It's weird how that works.
Yeah. They even put, because they also decided to reintroduce a cycling mechanic, they introduced effects that we had seen some before in Onslaught block that triggered like when you cycled a spell or when you cycled a card. Now they have effects that trigger when you cycle or discard something. It's just saying when you discard something would have the same effect, but they just wanted to make it clear. So yeah, the discarding stuff goes well with the card you're discarding on purpose to do graveyard things and the card you're cycling. Hour of Devastation, again, built on what Amonkhet was doing, but Embalm got replaced with Eternalize, which is a pretty straightforward swap. Instead of the zombies being copies, they're bigger.
And encased in that weird blue metal.
Yes.
Instead of just wrapped up in cloth.
Yeah.
They're encased in, what was it called? I had to look it up for Cap.
Oh man.
It had a really dumb name.
Hadn't asked me, I could have told you.
Devastation metal. Yeah, that's it.
Start with an L.
Yeah. Crap. What was it? Amonkhet metal. There we go.
It's not a metal, it's a stone.
Well, whatever. It turned. It's right. Hang on. It's right here somewhere. Lazotep.
There we go.
Wait, is that right?
Yes, it is. It's Lazotep.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, it's a magical blue substance. It's not even a metal. My bad.
Yeah, it's like a super tough stone.
Anyway. But yeah, because of Eternalize and Embalm, the graveyard, like what went into the graveyard was very important, especially once you got the Scarab God.
Yeah. And for non-creature stuff, Aftermath also.
Yeah, Aftermath was the weird melding of split cards and flashback.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Where instead of flashback, where it was just casting the same spell again, it was more like split cards where the first part was just a spell you cast from your hand, and then the second part you could only cast from the graveyard. It was very strange. But an interesting way to, I don't know, give another use to cards in your graveyard, except like lots of people really hated the way that Aftermath cards looked. Wait, was that Aftermath?
Yes, it was, just because they were so unusual.
Yeah, and at the time I was like, nah, they're fine, but you know what? Yeah, they're kind of dumb.
But they do make it very clear that they're different from anything else.
Yes.
And that helps.
That was the point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so now we're in current standard.
All right, yeah, continuing the home stretch. Ixalan, we're back to basic Magic stuff, and it was interesting. The Explore mechanic gives a minor self-mill capability to fill the graveyard with stuff. Because when you look at the card, you know, if it's a land, the creature gets a +1/+1 counter. If it's not, you can either put it into your hand. Wait, what happens?
Wait, no, that's not right at all.
No. If it's a freaking, damn it. If it's a land, you put it into your hand. If it's a not, who cares about the rest? This is the important part. If it's a land, you put it into your hand. If it's not, you can either leave it there or put it in the graveyard.
And then the creature gets the counter.
Yes. But it doesn't seem to serve any, that part of it, that self-mill aspect of it, doesn't seem to serve any function in Ixalan or Rivals of Ixalan. Not that I can tell. It seems like that angle is just there solely to interact with stuff from Amonkhet block, which is fine.
Yeah. And without interacting with Amonkhet stuff, it's still a good little like card selection thing.
Oh yeah, it's a very good smoothing ability, kind of like Scry or Cycling.
Yeah, just stapled onto some creatures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then in Dominaria, the present day, we're back to basic Magic stuff. There seems to be a small graveyard as a resource theme in Black, Green, and Blue, and there's some historic-focused recursion effects, since historic is one of the major themes of the set, but nothing too intense going on, and that brings us to the present day. I'm certain this is the most outright talking that I've done on a single podcast in a long time.
But you're on a roll. You know?
Yeah.
Should I interrupt you?
Your element.
I mean,
Well, no, I mean, even if you interrupted me, I would still end up saying all this stuff.
That's true.
you know what? I think Mike should be the guy that does most of the talking from now on.
Oh my gosh. I need to start investing in healthier drinks, I guess.
I hear Mountain Dew is good for you to drink, like all the time, forever, instead of anything else.
Might be good for morale, but I don't know about the other stuff.
Or you could just drink water.
I could.
That's gross. Fish pee in that stuff, man. He's picking on me because I posted on Twitter, hey, I'm trying to drink less Mountain Dew. What do you guys recommend? No, not water. What else do you guys recommend? And I had any number of people like, just drink water, dude. Like, won't you die in a fire? Clues is one of those people. He's like, well, just drink water. I'm like, Clues, I swear to God. Anyway. So yeah, that is a look at how Magic has used the graveyard at a very surface level. Of course, we couldn't go too deep into all of this because we were trying to cover it all. But it's really neat to see how much of it was there from the beginning, and how they've slowly built up to, instead of just being, where things go to die and then where things go to be recurred.
Yeah.
Like mechanics like Dredge and Delve and the various, starting with Eater of the Dead, the various things. The graveyard is a whole other resource that if you want it to do a thing, chances are there are cards printed to do that thing. Or
Yes.
be that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And as with any sort of mechanic, there have been some graveyard mechanics that have been just ones that worked real well, like cycling. There have been some that have been way overpowered, like Dredge, and they have learned from that experience to sort of streamline it to do what they want it to do mechanically
without breaking the game in half. Yeah.
Yeah. Because there could always be a mechanic you just throw out and that says, and this happens, and all the internet would break.
Yeah,
of
course.
It was
called Delve.
Yeah. Bring back Delve. And we're not gonna make any sort of, we're gonna take away some of this that made it worse.
Delve and Dredge. It's the 2 Ds. Double Ds.
Yeah, which is doom and defeat.
Death and destruction.
Give those, that works too.
Despair.
And more despair.
I was going to say despair and despondency.
Ooh.
Nice. The ubiquitous verbosity on this episode is truly uplifting.
Thank you, Brian, for giving us some SAT words.
Forsooth. So,
did you just say hitherto unknown?
Blimey. So, listeners, let us know what's your favorite graveyard mechanic or card. Mine's Nether Shadow.
Yay.
How about you guys? Other than Life from the Lone Mike, what's yours?
What? Oh.
It's okay. You can have Life from the Lone.
Okay, thank you. I really did not have a backup answer.
God knows the rest of us didn't want it, right? No, I'm kidding.
Mine would have been Oversold Cemetery.
Oh yeah.
Yes, that's a dirt card. That's a dirt card.
I'm actually gonna take what Dirk suggested we discussed earlier. Getting stuff from other people's graveyards, simply it appeals to the part of me that's like, wow, what you're playing looks really neat. Yeah. But, at least if it's in the graveyard, in theory, you've had a chance to use it first. In theory, not always the case, but
hint, wink, wink.
This is the guy who loves shared fate, so I'm like, let's all just, yeah.
Let the record show that wasn't me that sighed like that. It was Dirk.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Nice.
My dad has this philosophy he calls OPF, or other people's food. You could sit down to family dinner, have the exact same stuff on everybody's plate, and he's looking at my brother's plate like, hey, you going to eat that? Because
that looks pretty nice.
Yeah.
Dude, my... who was that? It's family members. My Uncle Jake and Aunt Cheryl are like that. He will forever, they'll both have a plate of food, and he'll forever be picking food off of her plate and eating it. Partially just to torment her, but partially because he's like, hers tastes better. Okay, so it's 100% to torment her, but still.
At least he has a pretext.
Yeah, it's not like it's a subtext. It's just text. Yeah. I don't know how we got on this, but how about we wrap it up then?
All right.
Sounds good. So, final thoughts, Storks?
I'll go first on this so I can head out here. This has been a very fun topic because as Mike's going through the history of it, I'm fondly recalling some of the good times and some of the cool mechanics, and some of my thought, oh my gosh, this is so not good. And then the ones where I don't see how Dredge is a good mechanic. Yeah, it gets stuff in the graveyard, but I don't see how this is good. And then to see Mike do it and go, oh my gosh, this is so broken.
I love the fact that when they make cards that interact with the graveyard, it really is another resource. I mentioned at the beginning that I had done a little bit of looking into some other games and how they treat their graveyards or discard piles. And some of them, it's strictly off limits. And so once something's gone, it's just gone forever. And basically, like everything in Magic would be if everything was exiled. So I like the fact that there is this zone that, yes, it's gone, but they have made ways to interact with it for the most part. So, and it takes someone like Mike to really show us.
To remind us of the awesomeness and brokenness of some of it.
It's because there's so many effects that interact directly with the graveyard. Putting cards in your graveyard is almost like drawing cards, and in some cases it's slightly better. And drawing cards is awesome.
Hey, Mike,
This conversation explains so much.
it really does. Hey, Mike, what are the magic words?
Draw a card.
Yup. Huh.
Anything else, Dirk?
Nope, that is it from me.
We'll hope to see you in a couple days.
I'm hoping to see everybody else as well. And we'll get in communication about the meeting time and all that. As far as I'm concerned, I think we said 9, right?
That is when we said, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
So, dear listeners, these people with children and normal jobs just have no sort of pity on those of us who stay up all night working on stuff and then, sleep late.
No, none at all.
What I'm going to have to do is actually go to bed earlier tonight and tomorrow night so that when I have to get up at what is in my mind the ass crack of dawn, I can actually wake up and be at Dirk's house and be awake and alive rather than waking up an hour after I was supposed to be there.
And not being alive?
And not being alive, yes. Still dead. Yeah. So look, this is what I do to see my dorks and to record live episodes for the listeners.
Aw.
I know, it's putting myself out so hard to go to bed. It actually is impossible for me to go to sleep when I'm not tired.
That's tough. The days where I go to a midnight pre-release that night and I try to make myself go to bed at like 8, Sam goes down at 7, so I'm like, I'll try and lay down there, and I don't actually fall asleep for a while. I'm trying, and I'm like, I can't do it. So,
yeah.
But I know if I don't try, I'll regret it.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Thank you, inspirational poster.
You are welcome.
Oh, sorry, that's hanging there.
Oh my god. Oh, and hey, Dirk, I can bring you your Dominaria poster.
Yeah, well, that was kind of one of those things. Like, I really want them to come so that Chewy can bring the posters and give us to them all.
Oh, talking about pretext.
Yeah, well, I can't hide the truth. Yeah, the one poster I've got in my room that's a Star Wars poster. Apparently, my wife has been introducing Leighton to Star Wars, and he apparently really likes Star Wars, which I'm totally for. And one of the posters I've got in my room is a Star Wars poster, and I'm going, well, that means I could take that and put it in the boys' room, and that makes room for the Dominaria posters.
Let me upgrade you.
Yeah, I'm about to say, because there ain't no way that the Dominaria poster is going to make any sense to the boys. So, but the Star Wars poster would be one that I think Leighton would like.
Daddy, why you have a stupid map on your wall?
Yeah, I know. Well, there's a bunch of posters I used to have when I was when we were in college. I've got, well, even since then, but like the Skyrim map poster and everything I wanted to put on my wall in the office, but there was just no room because of the lack of windows. Or the overabundance of windows prevented me from, posters over them. So, but now the office has got a whole wall that I'm staring at. I'm like, it'd be great to put some maps up there. So, but yes, and with that, I leave you, gentlemen, to adieu.
Oh no, I'm scaling back on do.
Oh, well, yeah.
So you say.
I am.
Supuestamente.
Shut up. I've been drinking water flavored with Mio this whole time we've been podcasting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But oh well. Good night, Dirk. We will see you in a couple days.
Good night, guys.
Dirk's like, stop talking so I can go to bed. Hey, Brian, what you got?
So for mine, two-parter. For one, in terms of fun games, I I have told people about Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. I'm not being paid to promote the game or anything like that. There are people that are. I am not one of them. And I mentioned last time the Dragon Quest collaboration.
Hashtag not an ad.
Hashtag not an ad. Hashtag totally an ad. And that's been really cool. And then they announced at the beginning of this week that coming tomorrow on Friday, so at the time you hear this, it will start on Friday, they were releasing a new banner. And after almost 2 years, they at least know how to slow roll on this game. Sephiroth is on the banner. And people are losing their minds because apparently compared to where we are versus where we are compared to the Japanese version, he's being released early here. And there's another unit on the banner besides Sephiroth that's this monk that when she was released in Japan was literally broken. And they're thinking that maybe with the way our meta is now, she's not going to be completely broken, but she has attacks that deal magical, it deals magic damage, but it's considered physical, which is important because it means if you have dual wield on her, it will literally hit twice. And that's the physical aspect, but the magic aspect is important because a lot of raid bosses and trial bosses have much lower spirit than they do defense. And these attacks are based on her spirit value, not her power, which her spirit is apparently through the roof. Not to mention the more you raise her spirit, the tougher she is. So she's basically a tank. She's Doran, Siege Tower Doran, kind of, sort of. What is it? Inner Fire in Hearthstone? Yeah. She's kind of like that. And we don't have a unit that really does that. So between her and Sephiroth, and they're both the highest rarity on this banner, people are going to be pulling like cray-cray. So if you're looking to get into the game, as usual, it's always a good time, but this may be an especially opportune. The other thing I was going to mention, so a couple of weeks ago, we had that incident in, I think it was Toronto, where a guy ran a van into people. Mm-hmm. Terrible. And he actually, unlike a lot of these mass killings or attempt to kills, a lot of times those people, quite frankly, chicken out and take their own lives, which I always I wish we could get into the minds of these people. This guy survived. And after some of his statements were released, I heard a term I had never heard before. And I've now heard it a couple times. It's called incel.
Oh, God, those people.
Yeah. And I had never heard of this. And since then, I have become somewhat educated. For those that don't know, it stands for involuntary celibate. And I mean, as a concept, I get it. I'm like, yeah, that sounds like me for my late teens. I think a lot of people may feel that way at certain points in their life that, I can't find someone of the opposite sex or the same sex if that's what you're into, or either sex if you're into that, that wants to, spend time with me and have a romantic relationship with. That's I think a thing a lot of people go through. Most people do not hit 14 or 15 and find their soulmate right away. That with no awkwardness. That's really unusual. What unfortunately a lot of people that have adopted this brand, this tag, this association have done is misogyny. Basically, they blame women for making themselves unavailable, and thus you have some people that some of them are pretending to be nice guys, and unfortunately some quote unquote nice guys feel like if they're nice to a girl, that girl owes them something. Surprise, surprise, that's not how that works.
Yeah, it turns into a conspiracy theory.
Yeah,
where somehow women and society as a whole are actively denying you an intimate relationship.
Yes.
Somehow.
Yeah, which is just, so, and apparently there's different, people are at different levels of this, and some people really feel like there's no hope for them, and there's no way, it doesn't matter how attractive or unattractive they are, there's never going to be someone for them, and it's society's fault. Maybe it's their fault because they don't feel like they're attractive, or they feel like all women are out to get them. Incels can be women, but by far the most outspoken of these, in the greatest numbers of these are male. And I think part of that is because the way our society is right now, guys feel like they have to make the first move, and that puts more power, in theory, in the woman's situation, where she can simply say, I'm not interested in you. And the guy then gets upset and goes, well, why not? What's wrong with me? And I've always found this kind of fascinating. This is the first I've really heard of this incel association, or not association, but this label. But I've always found it kind of interesting. There are some guys that feel like a particular woman, or some woman, or some subset of women eventually owes them something, owes them companionship. And yet those same boys, I won't call them men, those same boys will turn around if you were to say, well, here's a girl that you're not very interested in. Maybe there's something about her that doesn't really appeal to you. Do you feel like you owe her anything? Oh, heck no. Oh, hell no. So they don't see it as cutting both ways. Now, I think a lot of them would feel like they would probably take companionship they feel like their standards are fairly low. So they would take companionship from almost anyone, but I guarantee you they have someone they're looking for. The mentality that anyone owes you a romantic relationship is just so odd. I get owing someone lunch if they buy you lunch. I get owing someone respect. I was raised that you respect someone until they prove that they don't deserve it. But I don't feel like anyone owes a romantic relationship to anyone else, at least not without, some willingness to engage in that. I don't think Mike, okay, he's in a relationship. I don't think Chewy, Chewy, if Chewy chooses to date someone, great, but I don't think that someone should be able to say, hey, Chewy, I've been really nice to you for a long time and you're not with anyone, therefore, if you don't go out with me, you're not a good person. You're being mean to me on purpose. What? Chewy might just not want to be with you, in theory?
In theory.
Okay. So
I kind of wish you'd get to the point, because you're just repeating yourself in different ways.
I suppose, yeah. Okay, I'm going to wrap up just by saying that I hadn't really heard of this term until about 3 weeks ago.
I think mostly just describing what he's learned.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm sharing with the class, and for anyone else that maybe has heard this term and went like, huh? Because I swear to you, until like 3 or 4 weeks ago, I had never heard it before, and I've been like, wow, I find this kind of interesting, but kind of really just ultimately very sad at the same time. So
yeah, the ones who label themselves incels and hop on the internet and bitch about women are actually terrible people.
Yeah, they're the conspiracy theorists.
Yeah. Well, it's not even that. They're terrible misogynistic people who hate women, but for some reason think that women owe them something.
Yeah. There's
a difference between I can't get laid or I can't find someone to be with and these people. Like, if you're like me, like I've been single for a long time. You guys on the show used to hear about some of my random dating escapades and whatnot, but now that's what the odds and ends are for. But,
and I suppose if anyone's going to take if anyone's going to take anything away from my final thought, it would be that if you feel like you're in this place, and if you start to feel like you're identifying with incels, stop, because what you are going through, again, is, I feel, a very normal thing, and hopefully your life will change. I will also say, maybe this comes from a bad place because I'm married and I, don't have an issue in this, but there's more to life than sex. Sex is great, but if your whole life is so obsessed with sex and your lack thereof, then that says a lot about you and your priorities as well. So, but anyway, so if you're going to take something away from this, it's if you're like, oh, I feel like I'm in this place and you're learning a little bit about it, don't Chewy's right. As soon as you identify as one of these people, even if you are not a woman hater, you're going to be lumped in with them, because there are, unfortunately, that is the mentality of a lot of them. That is the mentality that the conspiracy theorists that call themselves incels is women are terrible and they're the reason I can't, be with somebody. So don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah,
I'm reaching out with both hands.
You'll just make it worse for yourself in real life and in your own mind.
Look, if a bunch of nerds like us, and I mean all four of us, can ever find someone ever, then everyone can. Like,
if we can do it.
Like, I've been saying ever since, let's see, ever since high school, I've been saying I must be like the most effective, like, with the opposite sex guy who looks like me ever. And it's because I am not pretty. Like, I am fully aware of this. I am not an attractive man.
He doesn't feel pretty. Oh, so pretty.
But, like, if you treat women like people and not like objects, and you treat women like people and not like people that I'm trying to see naked, then you'll get you'll go a long way towards possibly seeing one naked sometime.
Yeah, it's perfectly legitimate to want to see one naked, as long as you're not, ignoring reality and their relationship status. But you don't have to make it, your defining characteristic.
That's not the end goal. If that's the end goal, then you're doing it wrong.
In certain countries, you can pay to have that taken care of,
Wow. Okay, enough of that.
Okay, yeah. You should probably cut that.
Nope.
Okay.
Effort.
Just again, priorities, right, Chewy? Priorities.
Yeah, just be nice and don't be fake nice. I have to be nice to this girl so I can... No, that's not how it works. Just be nice. For God's sake.
Nice.
This is actually a thing I've been wanting to say on Twitter ever since 3 or 4 weeks ago when I first learned about this, was if nerds like me can ever get laid ever, then everyone can get laid. So it's on you. The women aren't the problem, you are.
Nice. I've said more than I even meant to, but I'm glad you guys chimed in, because it's good to hear your thoughts about this as well. So I don't have anything else constructive to say, nor do I have anything that I've probably said already several times. So next.
Fair enough. Next. Professor Beard? Is that the name of this episode? Professor Beard Teaches Graveyard? I think it might be.
Yes. I think it has to be.
Wait, what'd you say, Mike?
He said,
hello?
What?
Hello?
What?
We can
What?
hear you.
Oh, you can? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Oh, so Chewy. Oh, damn it, Chewy. I forgot what.
Was this
What is
about
even
Professor Beard
going on
Teaches
here?
Graveyard?
Say what?
Was this about Professor Beard Teaches Graveyard?
No, it wasn't. I just forgot where I was gonna go at all. Okay, so yeah, like I said before, this was the most amount of talking I've done in a single episode in a while. This was the most research I've done before an episode in a while. Like I was actually sitting here falling asleep on the couch doing it last night. I had to finish up the rest of it before we started. But it was really interesting to go back and see, like, things. The game evolved those themes at a faster pace than I expected.
Yeah.
In a way, just with how early certain things showed up, and like, okay, here's this thing in Antiquities. Here are these things in the Dark. Here are these things getting even more fleshed out in Ice Age. I was like, I really wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the game has been able to continue building on and riffing on these things ever since, and we've got a lot of interesting and a lot of horrifying things out of it. It's pretty cool.
And Mike, to this day, loves to mill himself.
Yeah.
You better believe it.
And this coming from, the person who, when I started, I could hardly bear to lose one life to pay for something. I was like, oh, that's terrible.
Well, isn't that how isn't that something that a lot of players go through?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you overvalue your life total, and you also overvalue at the same time some of your resources that maybe you shouldn't. It's a learning process.
Yeah. And then sometimes you get a set like Odyssey where sometimes it's actually the correct play to discard your entire hand to this stupid activated ability just so you have threshold to turn on this other card.
Baby.
Thankfully, we don't have limited environments like that anymore because that's just kind of silly.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what about you, Chewy?
I'm single. I'm cool with it. I don't know.
Sorry if my final thought had overshadowed.
It came out of left field.
Well, I had learned a little bit.
This person
about
ran over some people. I'm like, where's he going?
Well, had you heard about that when it happened?
I heard about it when it happened, but I don't think I heard any of the incel fallout.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I have nothing new to add. So I'll just do all of the wrap-up stuff. So if you want to find more stuff, then you can go anywhere on the internet as the Mana Pool, because that's where it all happens. Over on Twitter is where I interact with people the most. That's at the Mana Pool. Facebook.com/the Mana Pool is where all of the notifications for everything I do go up. If you want to check out the videos that I do, you can go to youtube.com/the Mana Pool. Here lately, it's been YouTube games. Oh my god. It's been Hearthstone games from some laddering I did, and the Monster Hunt, which is the new PvE AI type thing that Hearthstone did. This is a lot of fun.
It's a whole lot like the Catacombs.
Yeah, it's like Dungeon Run, but not.
But not, yeah. That's good. I like that.
Yeah, the basic setup is just like Dungeon Run. But you get 4 all new classes, which is neat.
Yeah.
So that, and also that went up today, I got a game from a small indie developer called Last Encounter. That's a roguelike twin stick space shooter with a component-based weapon system. And I was like, ooh! And I streamed that a few days ago, and that was a lot of fun. If you like roguelite, both actually. Or,
I like lights.
Or twin stick shooters, or, well, that's really it. Look it up, it's on Steam. But it was a lot of fun. The first video of that where I was learning everything went up, and then the next one where I had more of a handle on everything will go up in another few days. Also, by the time you're hearing this, unless you're listening to it immediately, some Overwatch games went up, because I played some games with Bill and Steph and Haley that were on the new map, and they were really good games, so they're going to go up on YouTube, because they were awesome. The new map is also awesome. It's Rialto in Italy. Well, it's Rialto in Venice, I should say. And there are little robot gondola guys who on when there's one part where you go over a bridge over part of the waterways, and there are little robot guys on gondolas going under, so if you get knocked off you might land on a gondola, which I thought was crazy. They weren't there. This is where the Retribution PvE event took place, but it's years later, so the map is different, and it's daytime, and there are robot gondola guys. It's really cool. But anyway,
if you stay on the gondola, does it go somewhere? Or does it just throw you off the map?
I think eventually you'll get knocked off the map. I don't know. I've never actually had the balls to jump on one and see what happens. I might do that next time we play. I feel like, all right, Bill, cover me. I'm going to jump on a gondola. Why? Because I don't know. To which Bill will probably reply, all right, idiot, you're going to die. Because Bill's a sweetheart like that.
Yes.
But anyway, so that's what's going on YouTube. Also on twitch.tv/the Mana Pool. That's where we stream all this stuff. I stream such things as Hearthstone and Overwatch the most. I also stream The Walking Dead and this Last Encounter game and all kinds of other nonsense periodically. So come hang out. The chat is very chill because I'm not big enough to have too many people or to attract that many horrible people. And they get banned immediately. Stark Maximum, dude. He's one of my mods, and he is quick on the ban. He's like, Like, someone said something, and Stark, like, timed him out for a second, because that will delete his messages, because it was a spoiler of some sort for the game that I was playing. And the guy was like, what happened? And Stark goes, well, it's a spoiler for the game, and Chewie doesn't want to know. And he's like, Nazi mods, banned. And I was like, ah! I was like, Stark, why'd you buy that guy? Because this happened. And I was like, all right, then. Like, so yeah, it's very friendly, because you have to be. Or Stark will swing the ban hammer, and it's scary.
Why bother arguing when you can just click a button and make it go away?
Right? Which I appreciate. So thank you, Stark, for that. I really do. Stark and Cap are my mods, and they're the best.
Now, if only I could invent such a button for real life. Am I right?
Right? But anyway, yeah. So that's Twitch. Give us a follow. If you really feel like it, you can subscribe. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free Twitch subscription a month if you link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account, or to your Amazon account, that you can just give to a streamer, preferably a smaller one, like me. Hi. And it's the same as a paid subscription as far as Twitch is concerned for paying us streamers, which is awesome.
Wow, I just had the thought that, once we all become cyborgs, we might have the ability to selectively mute other people.
Dude, that would be sweet.
Yeah, gosh.
I hope these are not thoughts you have often.
No.
This just came to you, right? Okay, good.
Yes.
Mike's like, I'm not planning this at all. No, not at all.
I, for one, welcome our new cyborg overlords.
And of course, if you want to help support what I do with all of the streaming and the YouTubing, and of course, the 2 podcasts a week, don't forget Monday Night Magic, which I do with Clues and Squee, or Clues and Bill, depending on... I haven't figured out if I want to call him Squee or call him Bill all the time, so it comes out one or the other all the time. But anyway, we do that every week over on mtgcast.com. But if you want to help support what I do with all of this insane amount of content creation, the most direct way to do that is on patreon.com/themanapool, where you can get early stuff, Manapool episodes and YouTube videos early. You can get the early stuff and the odds and ends, which is all the stuff recorded before and after both Monday Night Magic and the Manapool that is uncensored and unfiltered, and it's just nonsense. We're either planning what we're going to talk about on the show, or just catching up, or talking about nerdy stuff. For the odds and ends for the last Monday Night Magic, we spent a very long time on Infinity War spoilers, just talking it out once Clues finally saw it. All 3 of us had seen it. There were plenty of warnings, so if you have the odds and ends and you haven't seen it, you're good. There's like 4 minutes of, okay, we're going to talk about it now, so here's your chance, stop it, for like 4 minutes straight. But anyway, we also watched the Speed Racer trailer on that one, the bad movie that the Wachowskis did.
Yeah.
I don't know why, I don't remember.
Oh, okay, the old one. There's not going to be another one of them?
No. This was the one from a few years ago.
I like that movie. Well, more than a few. So
it's a bunch of random nonsense.
2010 or so. It's been, Have you seen the new trailer for Venom? The one that actually has Venom in it?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Oh, not a fan?
It's 2008 is Speed Racer, by the way. Wow, 10 years. Okay. Anyway, and if you want, you can get the early stuff, the odds and ends, and become a lifeguard at the Manapool. Get it? And you will get your name on the end slate for all the videos that go up each month that you support at that tier, and also get a shout out on each podcast. So to that end, I would like to thank the following exceptionally generous lifeguards: Kim Ho, Andrew Hunt, Al, choking slightly, Paul David, Lance Delicious, Team U, Hellas Are You, John Morris, Stuart Slaw, PJ McMullen, Bosco Brittain, Casey, Nathan Hay, Danny Liao, Jason Doan, AJ Javieres, Cody Buckowing, Jake Jansons, Jason Kaus, Brian DeLucci, the aforementioned Stark Maximum, John Parker, Jimmy Scott, Violet Moon, Dan Holm, Bartle, Mike Miller-Burned, and the Beast Father, Aaron Goodwine. Thank you all so very much for your generosity. I quite literally could not do it without you. And with that, this was going to be a short episode, and then Brian started, and then I started, and now it's over. So this has been the mana pool number... hang on, 509.
509.
I got it.
509.
Not Monday Night Magic, even though I started with the Monday Night Magic intro oh so long ago. So thank you all so very much for listening, and go play some Magic.